a statement immediately. Like, we're not going through this whole entire race host monkey noise bullshit again. Following a report of a comment directed toward a player, arena security spoke with the fan involved and witnesses. Security determined there was no violation of the fan code of conduct. The fan was not removed from the arena, but elected to leave. We consider this.
That statement changes the entire story. A complaint was made, security investigated it in real time, witnesses were questioned, and the Fever say they found no fan code violation. But watch what happens when that very specific conclusion collides with the version being repeated afterward.
Again, here's Chelsea Gray talking about that.
Yeah, I don't know the specifics, but like stuff gets said on the sideline quite often. It wasn't directed at me, it was directed at Jackie. And she told somebody, and clearly they found reason to kick him out. Just leave it there.
Chelsea Gray says she did not hear the comment herself. She says it was directed at Jackie Young, and her understanding was that security found enough reason to kick the fans out. That distinction sounds tiny right now. It is not. Because later, when she is told what the Fever actually concluded, the entire conversation changes, and that is the part worth staying for. This is bigger than whether one fan said something obnoxious at a basketball game. The real question is what happens when an allegation travels faster than the investigation, especially in a league that has already dealt with highly publicized claims about fan behavior. When the facts arrive 5 minutes later, does anybody care enough to correct the first impression?
You guys today, Jackie Young and Chelsea Gray tried their best. Oh, they tried their best to facilitate some type of race situation, some type of Jussie Smollett situation, some type of Angel Reese.
The podcast immediately frames the incident in the most explosive way possible, comparing it to previous controversies involving allegations of racism around WNBA games. That is commentary, not evidence, and that distinction matters. At this point in the sequence, the actual public facts are much narrower. A player reported a comment, security approached the people involved, and the arena staff looked into what happened. That alone can become combustible because every audience brings history into the next incident. WNBA players have talked about hostile fan behavior before. Fans have also complained that ordinary heckling gets interpreted as something more sinister. So before anyone even knows the words that were spoken, people are already choosing which previous controversy this one supposedly resembles. That is how a basketball dispute turns into a culture war argument in about 30 seconds. One side hears, a player felt something cross the line, take that seriously. Another hears, here we go again, a fan is going to be publicly branded before anybody checks. The Fever's response is important precisely because they did something unusually simple, they checked.
2 Indiana Fever fans were just escorted out for saying something to a Las Vegas player. Here we go again.
The right people. No. So.
Got these 2 guys out of here. Now the funniest thing is when you look at the comments of this post, all victims here. And security acted promptly.
Now notice how quickly social media fills in the blanks. The initial post says 2 Fever fans were escorted out after saying something to a Las Vegas player. The comments immediately assume wrongdoing. Some praise security for removing them. Some insult the fans. Some start joking about what could have been said. But at that stage, most of those people do not know the actual comment, do not know what witnesses told security, and do not know whether the men were officially ejected. That is the first major lesson in this story. Wording creates reality online. Security spoke to a fan sounds procedural. Fans escorted out sounds disciplinary. Kicked out after abusing a player sounds like guilt has already been established. Those are 3 very different stories, yet they can all be generated from the same few seconds of arena footage. And once the harshest version spreads, corrections almost never move with the same speed. The accusation gets the viral post. The clarification gets a reply underneath it 6 hours later.
That's it. He didn't say anything at all. He was just chirping all game and I let him have it. Then he just made that one that was a little bit too far. She didn't elaborate on what she felt crossed the line, was glad about because it didn't cross the line. She's just sensitive.
Jackie Young's own description, as presented here, is more measured than the internet version. She says the fan had been chirping during the game, she responded, and then there was one comment she considered too far. She does not publicly specify the exact words in this clip. That leaves 2 things capable of being true at the same time. Jackie Young may genuinely have felt a personal boundary was crossed. Security may also have concluded that whatever was said did not violate the arena's written code of conduct. Those conclusions are not mutually exclusive. This is where the conversation gets more interesting than simply deciding who is lying. A professional athlete does not surrender the right to be offended just because heckling is part of sports. But feeling offended is also not automatically the same as establishing a punishable violation. Arenas have codes for exactly this reason. Threats, slurs, targeted harassment, interference with play, and abusive conduct can justify removal. Ordinary trash talk, even rude trash talk, can exist below that threshold. The Fever's statement does not tell us that the comment was polite. It tells us security determined it did not violate the code. That is a procedural finding, and it is the strongest verified piece of evidence available in the transcript.
Following a report of a comment directed toward a player, arena security spoke with the fan involved and witnesses. Security determined there was no violation of the fan code of conduct. The fan was not removed from the arena, but elected.
Read the language carefully. Following the report of a comment directed toward a player, arena security spoke with the fan involved and witnesses. That means they did not rely solely on the player's interpretation, and they did not rely solely on the fan defending himself. They sought other people who were nearby. Then comes the key sentence. Security determined there was no violation of the fan code of conduct. And finally, the point that becomes crucial later, the fan was not removed from the arena, but elected to leave. That does not prove every rumor about the exact words false, because the statement never publishes a transcript of the exchange. It does, however, directly contradict the claim that security formally ejected the fan for misconduct. And that distinction is why this incident became a bigger deal than it otherwise might have been. If the Fever had released one of those vague, open-ended statements saying, "We are aware of an incident and are investigating," people could have spent days constructing theories. Instead, the organization closed the factual gap almost immediately. For the league, that is probably the healthiest possible outcome. Investigate quickly, speak to witnesses, apply the written rules, state the result, move on.
Matter closed. The fan said, "I'm out of here. This is a waste of my damn time. This is how you're treating your paying customer? I spent, what, $500 for these seats? And Jackie Young's gonna say that I called it, just because I said this game was boring, I gotta get escorted out of here. Just because I said I'm bored as rocks. I'd rather watch paint dry. I'm escorted out of here."
The podcast then offers a dramatic imagined version of the fan's reaction, claiming he was effectively saying he had spent a lot of money, felt accused unfairly, and no longer wanted to stay. We should be precise here. That dialogue is commentary and speculation from the host, not a verified quote from the fan. But the broader scenario underneath the exaggeration is worth examining. Imagine paying premium money for a WNBA game, getting pulled aside because a player reports something you said, then being told after witness interviews that you did not violate the rules. Even if staff handled the procedure correctly, that fan could still leave frustrated. From the arena's perspective, security has almost no good alternative. Once a player reports a comment as crossing the line, staff cannot simply ignore it because the fan bought an expensive ticket. They have to investigate. If they do nothing, and the allegation later proves serious, everybody asks why the organization failed to act. So the real standard cannot be never question a fan. The standard has to be question people fairly, find corroboration where possible, and do not treat an accusation as a verdict. That is exactly why the witness piece matters so much. An arena full of cameras can capture movement. Nearby fans can often establish what was actually shouted. Security personnel can document what was reported. Those mechanisms are imperfect, but they are far better than allowing the loudest social media account to decide guilt.
If you can't say what he said and can't take fan heckling you, then you're thin-skinned. Aces and a few teams always looking for something or someone to complain about at Fever games. Fever said they looked into it. It didn't cross the line to be kicked out or removed. Why not say what it was? Because they questioned surrounding fans and determined whatever he said wasn't too far.
And now the public reaction flips. Once people see the Fever's conclusion, the question becomes, if the comment was serious enough to cause this much controversy, why has nobody publicly said what it was? There is a fair answer to that. Jackie Young is under no obligation to repeat something she considered offensive for the entertainment of social media. A player can report behavior to security without turning the post-game press conference into a courtroom. But the lack of specificity also limits what everybody else can responsibly claim. If we do not know the words, we cannot upgrade the allegation into something more severe. We cannot declare that the fan used a racial slur. We cannot declare that Jackie fabricated the entire interaction. Neither conclusion is supported by the material we have. All we can establish from the transcript is the sequence. A comment was reported. Arena personnel investigated. Witnesses were consulted. Security found no code of conduct violation. The fan chose to leave rather than being formally removed. Everything beyond that needs attribution. And that matters because the ugliest accusation in the podcast is the suggestion that, without a rapid investigation, someone could have escalated the story into a claim involving a racial slur. There is no evidence in the supplied material that Jackie Young intended to make such an accusation. That is the host's speculation. Treating that speculation as fact would recreate the exact problem this whole controversy is supposedly criticizing.
Good thing they actually spoke to witnesses, because he called me the N-word. You know that was coming. You know that if no investigation was done by the Indiana Fever, you know that was he called me the N-word. You know that was coming. Thank God we don't need to go through this.
This is where the commentary goes from criticizing a process to predicting what someone supposedly would have said, and that is a line viewers should recognize. You can argue that the Fever prevented a rumor cycle by resolving the complaint quickly. That is supported by the timeline presented here. You cannot fairly claim that a specific player was definitely preparing to invent a racial allegation. There is no evidence of that in the clip. That separation makes the criticism stronger, not weaker. You do not need an imagined scandal when the real media dynamic is already interesting enough. Because think about the incentives. A vague report involving fan misconduct generates engagement. People instantly connect it to whatever side of the WNBA culture debate they already occupy. Accounts start clipping video without context. Other players get asked about it. National shows can turn it into a segment. By the time the official finding appears, thousands of people have already formed an opinion. Rapid fact-finding interrupts that machinery. It removes the empty space where the worst assumptions grow. And that brings us directly back to Chelsea Gray, because her exchange with reporters is the cleanest example of what happens when a reasonable assumption runs headfirst into newly established information.
Yeah, I don't know the specifics, but like stuff gets said on the sideline quite often. It wasn't directed at me, it was directed at Jackie. And she told somebody, and clearly they found reason to kick him out. Just leave it there.
They didn't get kicked out though, Chelsea Gray. They didn't get kicked out. So I'm just leave it there.
I mean, if they didn't find any, they had a reason to kick him out. So
they didn't get kicked out though, Chelsea Gray. They didn't get kicked out.
They don't just do.
Listen to the wording. Chelsea openly says she does not know the specifics. That disclaimer is important. She was not the target, and she did not personally hear what was said. She understands that Jackie told somebody, then assumes the fans were removed because officials must have found a reason. That is not some outrageous leap. In most arenas, if you watch security walk someone away after a player complains, the obvious assumption is that the person got tossed. But this is why assumptions have to stop where confirmed facts begin. The Fever's statement says the fan was not removed and there was no code violation. So once that information exists, that they found a reason to kick them out explanation no longer fits the record. And watch the next moment closely, because this is the payoff the entire story has been building toward. The important part is not that Chelsea initially got something wrong. People get incomplete information after games constantly. The important part is how quickly a narrative can solidify before even the players have the full outcome of the investigation.
I mean, if they didn't find any, they had a reason to kick him out. So
they didn't get kicked out though, Chelsea Gray. They didn't get kicked out.
They don't just do that for nothing.
They actually found that it wasn't, but the fan opted to remain out.
Look. Oh, what? Oh, you mean they didn't get kicked out? Jackie Young was...
There it is. Chelsea is corrected on the central factual point. The fans were not kicked out. Now, the podcast immediately jumps from that correction to accusing Jackie Young of lying. That conclusion goes farther than the available facts justify. Why? Because Jackie's reported claim was that a fan said something she believed crossed her line. The Fever's finding was that the comment did not violate the official fan code. Those statements can coexist. A personal threshold and an arena disciplinary threshold are not identical. Likewise, Chelsea saying she thought security found reason to kick them out can simply reflect incomplete information, especially when she had already admitted she did not know the specifics. So if we strip away the insults, the memes, and the culture war baggage, the actual failure here is much simpler. People began speaking confidently before the investigation's conclusion was understood. That is the part every side should care about. Players should want accusations investigated quickly, because real abuse should not be dismissed as routine heckling. Fans should want accusations investigated quickly, because nobody should be branded guilty based solely on a viral post. Teams should want it because vague controversies damage the atmosphere around their games. The league should want it because trust disappears when every incident becomes another unresolved argument. Fast, transparent procedure protects everybody.
Oh my gosh, you can't make this up. You can't make, and that's exactly why you got to get these investigations over with quickly. Otherwise, you'd have people like Chelsea Gray making bullshit up at the podium, only to be corrected and say, actually, Chelsea, they already investigated the matter, Chelsea. So everything you're saying here is factually incorrect.
The host's core argument here is that quick investigations prevent incorrect versions of a story from lingering. On that narrow point, this incident gives him something substantial to work with. Chelsea's initial understanding was contradicted by the Fever's official account, and because the team had already investigated, reporters could correct the record immediately. But the commentary also demonstrates the danger from the opposite direction. The same host who criticizes people for jumping to conclusions then jumps from "the fan was not removed" to much broader claims about Jackie Young's motives and honesty. That is the trap. If your standard is evidence, it has to apply when the evidence hurts your preferred side too. The fan not being ejected does not prove Jackie invented the comment. Jackie feeling that the comment went too far does not prove the fan violated arena rules. Chelsea misunderstanding what security ultimately decided does not prove she intentionally misrepresented the event. And the Fever clearing the fan under its code does not mean players must happily accept every piece of heckling directed at them. The most defensible conclusion is narrower and honestly more useful. The system worked because a complaint triggered an investigation rather than an automatic punishment. That is what should become normal across professional sports. A player reports something? Take it seriously. Security checks it? Good. Talk to witnesses? Even better. Evidence supports removal? Remove the person. Evidence does not support a violation? Say that clearly and close the case. No endless vague investigation, no public trial by social media, no assumption that every complaint is fabricated, and no assumption that every accusation is automatically proven. There is also a business angle nobody should ignore. The WNBA is fighting for every ticket buyer, every television viewer, and every new fan it can get. Fever games in particular have become high-attention events, and that brings more passionate supporters, more critics, more heckling, and inevitably more disputes about what fans can say. If teams become perceived as places where spectators can abuse players without consequences, players and families feel unsafe. If they become perceived as places where ordinary criticism can get paying fans thrown out without evidence, customers feel unwelcome. The league has to protect both sides of that line. Written codes of conduct exist to convert emotional disputes into standards that can actually be enforced. And this case offers a clean example of why. Jackie had one perception. The fan presumably had another. Security did not have to decide whose feelings were more legitimate. They had to determine whether the conduct violated policy. According to the Fever, it did not. That does not erase the interaction. It resolves the disciplinary question. The other reason this matters is credibility. The WNBA has had past fan conduct controversies that generated national attention. Every new accusation therefore arrives with a credibility battle already attached to it. Some viewers will instinctively believe the player. Others will instinctively believe the fan. Both instincts are dangerous when they replace evidence. The solution is not to mock every allegation. The solution is also not to label every accused spectator before the facts are known. The solution is speed plus verification. That is why Indiana's immediate statement may be the most important part of this entire story. Not because it humiliates Jackie Young. Not because it proves some grand conspiracy. It matters because it prevented ambiguity from becoming the story. Within a short window, the organization gave the public a procedural answer. There was a report. Security interviewed the people involved. The code was reviewed against the conduct. There was no violation, and the fan elected to leave. Compare that with what happens when organizations say nothing. The first viral caption becomes the unofficial truth. Television debates build on it. Players get asked questions based on it. Fans start attacking one another online. Then 3 days later, a bland correction arrives after everybody has moved on. Indiana eliminated that gap. And ironically, once you eliminate the gap, the controversy becomes less dramatic but more revealing. We are no longer arguing over some mysterious ejection. We are talking about where the line between heckling and misconduct belongs. Who gets to define that line, and how sports organizations should react when a player and a paying customer describe the same interaction differently. That is a debate worth having. Because sports without crowd emotion is sterile. Fans boo. Fans chirp. Players respond. Rivalries become fun because there is tension. But nobody buys a ticket that gives them permission to threaten, stalk, use prohibited discriminatory abuse, or interfere with the game. The challenge is preserving the first category without tolerating the second, and you cannot do that through vibes. You need rules and evidence. So when Jackie Young says something went too far for her, that deserves to be heard. When witnesses tell security what they heard, that deserves to matter. When security concludes no code was broken, that deserves to matter too. And when a teammate later speaks from an incorrect understanding of the outcome, reporters should correct it without turning the correction into proof of some larger moral failure. That approach is less emotionally satisfying than instantly picking heroes and villains. It is also far more credible. There is one final piece. The fan reportedly decided to leave after the interaction. That choice will be interpreted differently depending on who is watching. Some people will say, if he did nothing wrong, why leave? Others will say, if I were publicly confronted after paying for a ticket, I would leave too. Neither interpretation proves anything about the original comment. People leave uncomfortable situations all the time. Voluntary departure is not the same as formal ejection, and it is not evidence of guilt. The Fever understood that distinction well enough to put it directly into the statement. That one sentence prevented the phrase kicked out from becoming an uncontested fact. So now the choice is yours. Did Indiana handle this exactly the right way by immediately investigating the complaint, speaking to witnesses, clearing the fan under the code, and closing the matter? Or do you think the fact that Jackie Young believed the comment crossed a personal line means arenas should use a stricter standard even when security cannot establish a rule violation? And separate from that, was Chelsea Gray simply operating with incomplete information, or should players be more careful before publicly saying security found a reason when they admit they did not hear the incident themselves? Drop your answer in the comments, because those are two very different questions, and this story gets distorted when people combine them. If you want more WNBA breakdowns, where we separate what was actually confirmed from what people online are claiming, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one.